Today, we're diving into a really intense story, one that comes from a recent transcript. It's all about how the arrest of a single person in Venezuela allegedly pushed the world's biggest superpowers right to the edge of a full-blown conflict.
I mean, what a way to start, right? This is the high-stakes question at the absolute heart of the source material. It just grabs you and immediately frames this event not as some regional issue, but as the potential trigger for a global catastrophe.
So, how did this all kick off? Well, according to the source, it all began with a single raid way back on January 2nd, 2026. And look, this wasn't just any old arrest. This was the move that apparently lit the fuse on an international powder keg.
Now, get this. The transcript describes this as an incredibly sophisticated, almost surgical operation. We're talking electronic jammers that cut off all communications in a 6-block radius and tactical gear operating on NATO frequencies. Those little details suggest, at least according to the source, that maybe there was some foreign involvement.
And this is where things just explode. I mean, we're talking less than 6 hours later, Beijing drops an ultimatum. And that phrase, all options, that's not how diplomats talk. That is a direct threat. The source claims those two words were enough to send global financial markets into a complete nosedive. This was clearly way more than just a simple diplomatic spat.
So why all the drama over one executive? Well, the story claims that Dr. Li Wei's official job title was basically just a smokescreen. His real role was apparently much, much bigger, a key player in a secret financial war being waged against the West.
So who was this guy, really? According to the transcript, Dr. Li was the man who wasn't supposed to exist. His real mission? Managing a secret multi-billion-dollar financial lifeline that was, by itself, keeping the entire Venezuelan government afloat and doing it completely outside of Western control. He was basically a ghost in the financial machine.
And the scale of this thing, it was just massive. They allegedly ran the whole operation from a 40-story building in Caracas that they called the Shadow Embassy. This wasn't just an office, you guys. It was a totally self-contained financial hub with its own gold vault and quantum-encrypted comms that went straight to Beijing.
What we're looking at here, this so-called alternative financial system, was basically a prototype for a whole new global economy. It was handling over $200 billion a year, which posed a direct threat to the US dollar's dominance. It proved that huge international trade could happen with the dollar completely out of the picture.
So, was his arrest just a lucky break for the West? Not according to this source. It alleges a very clever CIA plan called Operation Financial Pressure. The idea wasn't to go in guns blazing, but to use Venezuela's own internal politics to get them to cut off China's financial pipeline for them.
Okay, so the trap was sprung. The arrest happened. And the blowback? It was immediate, and it was huge. What China and Russia apparently saw it as an act of financial war was met with a coordinated counterattack that really shook the global system.
So what does Beijing do? They don't send a strongly worded letter. Nope. They unleash pure economic warfare. The source calls it the Great Withdrawal, and it started with them dumping $400 billion of U.S. bonds. This wasn't just selling stuff, it was a direct attack on the stability of the U.S. economy.
And you can see the ripple effects right here. The impact was instant and it was devastating. European markets just plummeted, oil prices shot up, and the dollar took its biggest dive in over a decade. The message was loud and clear. China could cause some serious economic pain whenever it wanted. But it didn't stop there. The source also describes this really sophisticated cyber attack on the SWIFT banking system. But here's the twist. The goal wasn't to steal money. It was just to cause chaos, to prove that China could paralyze the entire infrastructure of Western finance at will.
So you've got this two-front response happening. While China is hitting the West right in the wallet, Russia, according to the source, opens up a military front. It sent the biggest naval force to the Western Hemisphere since the Cold War, a pretty unmistakable signal that any move against Venezuela would be met by the Russian military.
Now you might be thinking, wow, what a coincidence. Well, the transcript says it was no coincidence at all. It points to this secret pact, a mutual defense protocol, that turned China and Russia from just partners into this unified bloc, ready to hit back with everything they had, economically and militarily.
So all of this leads us to the final, terrifying chapter in this story, a 72-hour countdown to the point of no return, where the real stakes for the entire planet are finally laid bare. The source claims the world had reached what strategists call a point of cascade failure. You can think of it like a horrible feedback loop. Every single move by one side forces an even bigger reaction from the other, and it locks them into this path where conflict becomes almost impossible to avoid.
And the source lays out this incredibly scary sequence of events. It's basically just a series of tripwires. If the deadline passes, China retaliates. That forces a U.S. response, which then triggers Russian military action. Each step leads directly to a massive superpower confrontation.
So, you have to ask, what was this all really about? Was it just one guy? Or Venezuela? Of course not. The source argues this was a fight over the fundamental structure of global power. It was about America's financial dominance versus China's quest for economic freedom and Russia's ambition to get back on the world stage.
And here it is. This is the real kicker, according to the transcript. The one projection that allegedly pushed Washington to take this massive risk, the idea that China's alternative system could cause demand for the U.S. dollar to collapse by 40% in just 5 years, effectively ending American financial power as we know it.
And so we're left with this really unsettling question. Was the arrest in Caracas the start of a new crisis? Or was it simply the match that finally lit a fire that's been smoldering for decades, forcing a hidden conflict over the future of global power right out into the open? The next move could literally change everything.